Ahead tonight, Faith Temple students prepare for their final dismissal as the school gets ready to close its doors for good.
The Attorney General pushes for capital punishment.
And why observers have declared a real estate rebound. Arjuna Noel Ferguson investigates. The National Report starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This segment of the news is brought to you by BTC, powered by Lime.
Breaking news off the top tonight. Suspended NIB Director Algernon Cargill has been fired from his post. This according to sources within the National Insurance Board.
Now, ZNS understands that the letter of termination was hand-delivered to Mr. Cargill at about 5 o'clock this afternoon. There's no word on when the termination takes effect. It follows an extensive audit of the affairs of the board under Mr. Cargill's tenure.
Now, a series of contracts and bonuses granted during Mr. Cargill's tenure are at the center of the debacle. Though Mr. Cargill did not talk with auditors, he met with the board officials just 2 days ago.
And this week, Mr. Cargill, through his attorney, Alfred Sears, called for a judicial review of the controversial NIB audit and asked for it to be thrown out.
Mr. Cargill claimed he was not interviewed or given a chance to respond to the allegations. However, Minister Gibson lamented that Cargill was given more than enough chances to respond to auditors. Of course, ZNS News will continue to follow this story.
Meantime, Progressive Liberal Party Chairman Bradley Roberts is slamming the Free National Movement tonight for what he says amounts to a pure lack of responsibility. Rather than play the blame game as it relates to the problems up at NIB, Mr. Roberts says former F&M leader, the Honorable Hubert Ingram, needs to accept responsibility for the scandal, which he says clearly started under his administration. Mr. Roberts went on to point out that it was Mr. Ingram who admitted to hiring NIB Director Algernon Cargill and stating publicly that he thought Mr. Cargill did a wonderful job at that board. Additionally, the PLP chairman criticized current F&M leader Dr. Hubert Minnis for changing his position on NIB 3 times without once accepting responsibility.
The audit findings and, more importantly, the incoherent rambling from the culpable leadership of the F&M underscores their duplicity, complicity, and leadership deficit on issues of integrity in government, accountability, and stewardship, all of which strikes at the foundation of our democracy. There is no acceptance of responsibility or accountability, no public apology or gesture of atonement on the part of the F&M leadership. Only distractions and deflections away from this major failure in governance.
After 23 years of providing Christian education, a private school is being forced to close its doors.
That's right. Faith Temple Academy has succumbed to lean economic times, prompting officials to close the school, which has been left with a debt of more than $1.5 million.
Our Carla Palmer explains what school officials are up against.
When established in 1985 as Bethville Preschool, there were only 8 students on the rolls of the Faith Temple Christian Academy. But from a high of 800, the enrollment has seen such a dramatic decline that the school is now forced to close its doors.
The school will be closing in June. We find ourselves in this very serious financial position. If I could find someone who would give me $1.6 million today, I believe the church would be inclined to continue the school.
Bishop Philemon Wilson is Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of the school. He says the problems first started some 10 years ago from a private road closure that was further compounded by the New Providence Road Improvement Project.
The road improvement came right in the time with a financial downturn in the country, which I'm sure would have contributed to parents' frustration. Having not sufficient funds to deal with what they need to deal with. And so When I look at it from where I sit, I see two things. Road frustration. As you would have noticed coming in here, we have what is called the Pine Barren Road, which is very frustrating. And it took us a couple of years to get our Western Gate open. Finally, we got that open, but the damage has already been done.
This imminent closure is announced almost 1 year to the date, last June, when the high school closed its doors. Bishop Wilson says teachers will remain on the payroll until August. Also, parents will be able to access all documents related to their children's education.
So we would like to thank all of these persons who had some hand in the success of the school.
Bishop Wilson and his team are praying people and remain faithful that a good Samaritan will step forward and give the $1.5 million that's needed. Should this not happen, officials say the property will either have to be leased or sold to pay all debt. For ZNS Network News, I'm Carla Palmer.
Although recent police statistics indicate that crime is down, the fear of crime is high, and the public outcry for capital punishment to be carried out loud and clear.
And while the Privy Council may have stopped a series of executions in their tracks, Attorney General Allison Maynard Gibson says her office will continue to seek the death penalty in cases they consider the worst of the worst.
It's a position that the public has supported in the main for decades. Haltavi's Munnings explains how the office will approach the issue and what other initiatives are being developed in the fight against crime.
The last time an execution was carried out in the Bahamas was back in 2001, and even then, there was opposition. But Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Senator Allison Maynard Gibson, maintains that the Christie administration will send a clear message to the entire population that the government will follow the rules of the Bahamas to punish every criminal for violating the law. And to do this, the Attorney General's office will also seek the death penalty in court cases when necessary.
You will have already seen that in at least one case, the Attorney General's office has asked for the death penalty. I can signal that there will be other cases also in which the death penalty is asked. It is a matter for the courts whether they in fact give the death penalty, but we will be asking for the death penalty.
AG Gibson clarified that her office is championing hanging as the primary method of capital punishment. While she cannot confirm when that will ever happen, the death penalty, she maintains, will be engaged on cases branded as the worst of the worst.
There are those, of course, in the Bahamas who are for and against the death penalty. It is our job to make it every effort to bring the law of the Bahamas before the courts, and whether or not there is a decision to in fact award the death penalty is a matter for the courts.
The Organization of American States and Amnesty International have made it clear that capital punishment should be eliminated from our laws. But besides capital punishment, the Attorney General pointed out that the Swift Justice Program is another element to the government's plan to lower the crime rate. She referenced the case involving the recent murder of American visitor Kyle Brunner.
We're treating that kind of situation in the same way that we treat persons who attack judges or policemen or officers of the court, and that is that we will expedite those matters to trial, and as we have said in our Vision 2030, within 6 months.
The Attorney General revealed last month that the country's conviction rate is up by nearly 20%, which she indicated further illustrates the effectiveness of the Swift Justice Initiative. She also illustrated that from January there have been 18 guilty verdicts out of 30 cases for a 60% conviction rate, and it won't stop there.
To look at the situation where recently a minister, someone holding high office in the country was attacked, the courts, that matter will be tried on June 3rd. And I think that is a definite indication of the determination of this government working with the judiciary to bring about swift justice in the Bahamas.
Haltavi's Munnings for the ZNS News Network.
The appeal hearing of former police corporal Donovan Gardner was put off to June 4 today after Court President Justice Anita Allen scolded Crown prosecutors for filing their submissions late. Justice Allen noted that the court likes to come to the bench properly prepared and knowing what the issues are. However, she said the court is prevented from doing that when submissions are filed late. She also noted that both the Crown and the defense are guilty of late filings and that the court is, quote, tired of it. She noted that if the freedom of the appellant wasn't at stake, the court wouldn't accept late submissions. Justice Abdullah Kante also reminded both sides that submissions are to be filed 3 days in advance of a hearing in accordance with practice directions. Justice Allen then adjourned the matter. Donovan Gardner is seeking to have his manslaughter conviction quashed. He's serving a 10-year prison sentence for the manslaughter death of 28-year-old Desmond Key. Attorney Wayne Monroe is defending him.
The Kofi Goodman murder trial has been put off to Tuesday to allow both sides to ramp up legal discussions. 38-year-old Goodman is accused of killing 11-year-old Columbus primary school student Marco Archer back in September of 2011. However, he maintains his innocence. Attorney Jeffrey Farquharson is defending Goodman. Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions Garvin Gaskin and attorney Neil Brathwaite and Darrell Taylor are prosecuting the case. The local real estate industry is on the rebound.
Officials at Balmoral are attributing the spike in sale to the airport development, the new Providence Road upgrade, and the BAHAMAS project as incentives to invest in the Bahamas. Our Janina Ferguson reports.
Having invested $30 million in the Balmoral property during the brink of a worldwide recession 5 years ago, president of the high-end development Jason Kinsdale says signs of an economic turnaround are evident. And in light of this, he's encouraging first-time homeowners to take advantage of the government stamp exemption.
So don't wait. We have the first-time buyer exemption that's expiring in a month. As a 5% exemption on stamp tax off the purchase of the home, and property tax exemption for the first 5 years. So on a $300,000 home, that's $18,000 in savings that people aren't taking advantage of, and they're waiting. I don't quite understand it.
The developer says this is the opportune time to buy, but he's concerned about the rising cost of land. And nowadays, Kinzo says more people are more cautious about spending money.
For the lowest prices that I'm seeing for multifamily acreage is $500,000 an acre in the West. So how can I pass on an expensive home to a potential buyer when I have to pay $500,000 an acre? So there's a lot of people waiting and seeing, but land is not getting cheaper, it's getting more expensive.
Now, while there has been some skepticism about the multi-million-dollar BAHAMAS development, Kinsale says he still believes some persons are underestimating its impact.
At the end of the day, when you have to hire 6,000 to 7,000 employees, people need homes, they need somewhere to live. There's going to be foreigners coming in. I know there's an issue with the permits, but the reality is there are foreigners going to be coming and they need homes. So you should be positioning yourself as a potential landlord.
Kinsdale applauded the BAHAMAS development, the new airport facility, and the Gateway project. He's confident that these three elements will make investors more comfortable when doing business. But he says the issue of crime can turn all of those positives into negatives.
It impacts us socially and economically and on many fronts. And that was one of the reasons that we decided to embark on this gated community concept, because unfortunately it's a necessity, it's not a luxury, and that's the point where we're at right now.
Balmoral will hit the 100th residential property mark later this year, and with all of the improvements taking place island-wide, they anticipate more growth from here. Janae Ferguson, ZNS Network News.
Well, in your first look at weather, we take a look at satellite picture. Lots of clouds around the southeast Bahamas, but from northern Bahamas down to about Georgetown, Exuma, into Long Island. Beautiful sunshine, and that allowed temperatures to warm up into the mid-80s. 86 was the official high, overnight low 69, normals around 86 and 71. Right now we're at 80 degrees outside our studios with an east-south easterly wind flow at 5 knots, relative humidity at 62%, your barometric pressure 30.07 inches, and it is falling. When we come back, we'll take a look at Family Island temperatures, boating forecasts, and your travel weather.
Well, still to come, hear from the Minister for Investments on the latest pitch to would-be investors.
And the brightest primary school student will be recognized this weekend. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
portion of the news is brought to you by Shell HELIX Ultra. Performance you can see.